Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Excess Exceed. This is Gearface. Very, very excited today to learn a little bit about Vatista from Migo. Hi, Migo. Thank you so much for being here.
Always a pleasure. Hey, everyone.
I was telling Migo before we started recording that I deliberately have not looked at Batista's kit. I'm not sure I would understand much if I did look at it. So I'm coming in as fresh as I possibly can to this episode. I have no idea what she does other than, as we were saying, she's got a lot of red in her kit. There's an awful lot of ultras on the board. So very excited to learn a little bit about what she's supposed to be doing. Um, Couple disclaimers before we get started. Number one, we're going to talk about playing to win on this show. That's not the only way to play Exceed. You can play Exceed in a variety of ways. For example, my favorite is playing for fun. And if you want to play for fun, you should. And if the lines of play that we're describing aren't fun to you, don't play that way. Play the way that keeps you playing the game. Number two, we tend to be pretty prescriptive, pretty absolute on this show. You're going to hear Migo say things like, pretty much always do this, or never do this, or this is what this is for. Uh, Take all of that with kind of a grain of salt. Exceeds not a solved game. I certainly haven't solved it. Even Migo, who is much more experienced and much better at this game than me, has not solved it. These are just his very informed opinions. If you think we've underrepresented something with Vatista, especially because, and Migo and I were talking about this as well, that she's kind of an underexplored character,
For
uh,
sure.
we might be missing stuff. If there's stuff about this character that we don't know, please let us know what we're missing. But yeah, other than that, Migo, tell me a little bit about Vatista.
Okay. I guess as a general overview, I mean, Batista is a character that's like a resource monster. Generates a lot of gauge, has a lot of force. Obviously, ultras are worth 2 force,
Yeah, and she's got a lot
and
of ultras.
yeah. So she's a resource monster, a lot of force, a lot of gauge. She has a lot of gauge generating effects, and also she is somewhat of a zoner as well. She has 2 fireballs, and she can actually play them over and over again with the help of a boost. So
Okay. So
basically, yeah,
is
she's
my
actually a pretty decent all rounder.
is my overall game plan going to be to get somebody at range and just hammer them with projectiles, or is that just one of the things she can do?
It's just one of the things she can do. Yeah, um, I would say ideally, of course, she has some really rewarding fireballs. She has this. She has Lumen Stella. Litea's Orbis is one of her big game plans. She just nukes them from orbit
Okay.
with a lot of power. Um, so she does play for that a lot. So yeah, I would consider her like play for zoning a lot of the time. I guess it depends on the matchup, but generally you do play for zoning as this character. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna be generating a big resource advantage, and I'm gonna be throwing my opponent across the board and then shooting gigantic lasers at them.
Yeah.
Okay.
She probably has the best. I don't know. I don't know if you could call it gigantic laser shape because there's only a few gigantic lasers
it's,
in
it,
Exceed.
it's like
Like there's Kokonoas
you have a big
and
list of DPs and whirls and all of the other shapes, and then one of the shapes at the very bottom of the list is just gigantic laser, and there's like two
big
cards in it.
laser shape.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like this one and probably Kokonoas. I think
yeah. The
Batista's big laser is the best.
the
So
laser archetype. So we got just like a big 3 to 8 hit for a billion damage card, and this is one of her win cons. Okay, but yeah. So
yeah,
let's get into how she gets there then.
yeah, for sure. I guess how do you want to start this?
I'd say up to you. I feel like character ability is always a good place to pick up from, and then we can just go into her kit and talk through what she's using things for. Unless you think that there's a better place to start,
Okay, yeah, we can start with the UA. Yeah, for sure.
let's do it.
So Batista, pretty simple UA. It's a strike UA. So she was a she elects to strike with this UA. She gets all push, pull, and draw effects are increased by 1. This is a pretty good UA. Helps with makes her grasp stronger, makes her focus stronger, makes certain card drawing effects and pushing stronger on her kit as well.
Okay.
It's a pretty good UA. Just pretty much if you're striking naked with it, without any boost or anything, you pretty much would want to use this almost all the time. It's
Okay.
really good.
There's no real reason not to. Um, for grasp, for example, like this is only on offense. You can't do this reactively, but you could chuck a sweep out of the way with Batista, and if you have positioning uh to get somebody to range 4 with grasp. Focus can draw
Hmm.
2. Okay, so there's no reason. Generally, there's no reason not to. This can be just a good default action. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
okay, and otherwise, I'm doing something like just defense or reading or mix up. I those conflict. I can't do both. But otherwise, I'm just like, well, let's just hit with something. This is probably what I'm going to be using.
Hmm. Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
sounds good.
And so her front side is very solid. Her exceed side is very situational, I would say, because you trade off. Your action is no longer free. You realize that there's a 2 gauge cost for her action.
Oh,
So not
okay,
only yeah, so not only do you have to pay 1 gauge to flip unless you veil off, you also have to pay 2 gauge wherever you use his action. Um, so this is actually quite expensive. That's why I consider it pretty niche because the front side is pretty free and just free benefit
right,
without any cost whatsoever. But I would say the exceed side, you would want to use this if you want to close out the game with it, or get additional like or cycle through your deck faster while striking because your draw effects are increased by 2, so you just so you go through your deck faster while you're striking.
right.
Um, at the cost of 2 gauge. 2 gauge is not a not a big deal for her. She can get a lot.
That's
Um,
something that I'm going to have to get my head around. That she generates so many resources that this actually might be more affordable than it looks.
yeah, it's actually not. People like shy away from the costs, but it's actually like totally reasonable for this character because she gets a lot of gauge.
Okay,
There's so many. There's like 2 cards. There's like 2 ultras to generate even more gauge just by playing it.
okay,
Um, so not only do you draw a lot with this, so you can do this to go through your deck faster. You can also the unique thing from the exceed side is that notice that the front side only push, pull, draw.
right.
Um, this one increases also your advance and retreat. So
Okay, so
this basically means that
I can cross out all the way across the board then and stuff like that.
yeah, so you can retreat 5 with cross. Close is a subset of advance, so you can close 4 with assault. You can advance 5 with dive, and there's certain like movement effects on her ultras that you can also take advantage of. So in addition to having her push, pull, draw, enhance, she also gains more advance and retreat.
Okay,
So it gives her more ways to. That's why I'm saying there's a good game closer. You can assault all the way from you know from downtown to kill
right,
them.
right.
You can retreat all the way with cross and close them off with fireballs. So this is a pretty like um, it gives you a lot of how to say this. It makes your strikes that much better at the cost of 2 gauge. And if
Okay,
you think you can afford the 2 gauge doing this, then yeah, you just need 1 or 2 good strikes with this, and it's a pretty good value.
right. And
Um,
obviously, unlike with her front side, which is a great default action that I'm probably going to use every turn. This is expensive enough that if I'm on exceed side and I don't need this, I might just empty strike, or I might just strike without this ability.
Yeah, or you can
Okay,
just revert. You can revert back to front
true,
when you're done.
true. Yeah,
Yeah,
fair point. So
there's always
really,
the option of.
you would use
Oh,
this
sorry,
for
go on.
one or two strikes to just get away or set something up and then revert and blow your opponent up.
Yeah, that's from my experience. I just do it for like 1 or 2 strikes, and then like okay, I got the benefit from it. I can go back to front, just
Gotcha.
resume. Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay, so I shouldn't be treating this like a late game mode shift that I stay in all game and just and that's my win condition. But it's good for a quick movement boost if I can afford the tempo, and it will set something up really good for me.
yeah, exactly. Her exceed side is situational, but I have found value from it. So if you see if you think you can get value from the advanced retreat and the extra push pull draw, then go for it. I would
Okay.
say, but just keep in mind that it is kind of expensive and also it takes tempo because it takes a turn to flip over.
Right. Okay. That
You
makes
have to keep
sense.
that in mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not like the gauge cost of flipping is going to be that big a deal for her because she generates so much.
Yeah, it's like sometimes you would just like casually see there at 8 gauge. You're just like, okay, well, I could spend 1 to flip.
Right. Yeah. This is probably fine.
Yeah.
And like I just got done with a lesson earlier today on Carl Swangi, the season 2 grappler, and we were talking about like,
Mm.
oh my god, 4 gauge is so hard to get to. So I got to readjust to the kind of numbers we're talking about here. When you're like, I'm going to need a second row of gauge for how much I'm going to be spend or generating here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you are the season with key charge as a boost on a
Yeah,
normal.
you
So
got you got you got Veloffs on deck. You've got it sounds like a lot of gauge generation tools. Okay, cool.
mhm.
So I've got that as my UA and my character ability, and I'm going to be using this to set up just ranges that I want and keep my resources flowing. It sounds like it doesn't sound like there's too much to it other than that.
It just helps make your resource game better. Pushes the opponent away further, makes them. If you attack their force a lot, it's really good for your character.
Okay. Oh, so sure, you make them run back into you. So you throw them to range 4 instead of range 3 with grasp, and now if they're trying to get to range 1, they got one more space to cross.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly. So you
makes
just make the
sense.
force differential that much bigger between you and the opponent.
Makes sense. Okay, cool. Um, how are we going to? I feel like if we talk about the specials, we're going to be here for like 5 seconds because there's only two of them. How are we going to be talking about her kit here? I've never actually had to cover a character with this many ultras. Um,
Yeah.
so
Is
I,
there?
I we got these two. I'm noticing are very cheap, right?
Mhm.
And then these are the more expensive ones, and then she's got her specials. How do you think that what makes sense? How do we cover these?
Um, Good question. I guess we could go over her fireballs first. I mean, it's very
Sure,
simple.
that makes sense. Sure.
Yeah,
So we got our two specials over here, and then we've got the big scary nuke. So we
yeah,
just do them like
and
this.
yeah.
Cool.
Let's start with the fireballs, and then we
Oh,
can go over, which are the best for the ultras and
yeah, of
stuff like
course.
that. Yeah. Um, I guess okay. So, firstly, I mean, Mikorosea Lubistella, like she has none of her specials are any melee tools. They're just both fireballs, and
Right.
that's totally fine. She has melee tools in her ultras and in addition to normals,
Okay.
so she's totally fine. Um, so Mikorosea, pretty simple. Full board, two power, two armor. It does not stun. Um, and I'm not sure why this isn't after, to be honest. But it says if this does attack hit, draw one.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting. Oh, it's
yeah,
probably it's probably so. Well, you could not be stunned by it. It might just be to avoid to keep you from empty striking with it. But if you'd be empty striking with it and they're close up, you're running a risk. I don't know either why that's an after. That's interesting.
I feel like it'd just be a hit draw one, unless I'm missing something. I'm not sure why this is an after, to
Okay,
be honest. But in any case, you might as well just treat this as a hit effect almost,
sure.
because if you hit with this, you draw one. Yeah.
Right,
So of
right.
course, it's a nice little simple poke. Doesn't do much damage, but it gives you gauge. It gets you cards. Card. If you use your UA, it gets you cards plural. It gets you two
Right,
cards.
right.
Yeah. So it's a really nice little poke. Keep in mind that turn one, the opponent can still dive you because it doesn't stun them. But it's still like a fine trade. You deal 2 damage. You take 3 because you have 2 armor.
2 armor, right.
So it's an okay trade. It's an okay trade. Turn one, turn two. Um, it's good to just play this on defense because it's 5 speed. So generally, you know, your fireball will go off first. Um, Initiating it with it is fine. There's nothing else better to do at
Just for that
range.
that extra draw effect.
The poke and the draw. Yep. So
Okay.
pretty staple fireball for her.
So
Very
and
easy to hit with.
it's interesting that it's a good defensive tool because it doesn't stun. So like you're like, awesome, my fireball went first and I stuffed out my opponent's fire. Oh wait, it's still coming at me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but
Exactly. It's just
it
like
it at least means that I'm getting gauge and I'm probably trading. They're probably trading less favorably into me because I have some armor, which might be fine.
yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Of course, initiating with it and then they just dive you on defense feels bad because just now it's like you struck and then they dove on defense and now it's their turn and they're in your face.
Right. Okay. So the trade off is it's probably above curve. I mean, if you're out at range 8, there's no speed curve anymore, but it's probably above curve, so it's good to defend with. But you're only getting that draw 2 if you initiate with it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you do
Okay.
only get the extra draw if you initiate.
Makes
So this
sense.
is a pretty nice pokey fireball. There's a boost that's really good with fireballs, but we can get to that later.
Okay.
But just know that even though she doesn't have any recurring fireballs, she only has 2 copies of this, 2 copies of this. Standard distribution, 2 of each copy.
Okay.
Um, but she can, because of a boost on one of her ultras, she can play more fireballs than it would appear. So,
Gotcha.
but yeah, we'll get to that later.
Okay.
Microseo, solid. Lumen Stella is the nice big payoff fireball, very good. By itself is good. It's a guarded fireball shape, 3-6, push 1, draw 1. And it's 5 damage as well. So very solid damage and a great hit effect as well. Creates more distance if you draw. If you initiate, it's a double whammy. It's a push 2, draw 2.
Yeah.
It's very rewarding if you hit with this. And it's not too hard to hit with this as long as you have some sort of range to go off of. Do keep in mind that the opponent can assault or dive to try and dodge underneath the minimum range, but
Right.
if you keep that in mind, it's not a big deal.
So you probably don't want to play this like anywhere closer than range 5. It seems like this seems like a punish tool rather than like a thing you would do in neutral where your opponent can easily diffuse it.
Unless unless the opponent's lacking options against it, they've maybe ran out of assaulted dives.
Sure.
Yeah, or you have a read on them. Playing it at range 3 or 4 is riskier for
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
But
This is
also
very rewarding.
a high. I mean, this is almost like a low tiger shot thing. Like high damage pushes your opponent further out so that you can keep on hitting them before they can do much about it. It seems very very brutal.
Yes. If the opponent gets hit Lumen Stella, they would feel very bad.
Okay.
Yeah, it is basically like a low tiger shot kind of deal.
Okay.
Very rewarding and the push.
Are these things exactly? They don't seem like mix-ups exactly because this doesn't stun. So like if I'm at range 4, excuse me, if I'm at range 4 and my opponent plays dive, they kind of get what they want no matter what I'm playing at this range with these. Like
Yes, that's a really good observation.
they're not covering for each other exactly.
Yeah, so like Vatista as turn 1, if she initiates a strike with her UA, then it's like, okay, the opponent might dive in response because dive technically hits against both. Dive hits against both of these fireballs turn 1.
Right.
But of course, a cheeky little thing you could do with Vatista is, Vatista UA turn 1 dive and dive the opponent and get in their face because she is actually okay in melee because of her ultras and her normal. So Vatista turn 1 dive is something definitely cheeky you can do, and it works a fair bit of the time if they just dive in response to your fireballs.
Okay. So the turn 1 mix up for Vatista probably isn't this and this. It's just this and this. And you would use Lumen Stella a little bit later as a punish tool when options are down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
Makes sense.
The mix-up is basically Vatista initiating with either dive or fireball. Beat
Sure.
one or the other.
Sure.
Yeah, and of course, if the opponent just like blocks, then Lumen Stella just gets huge reward. Push 2, draw 2.
Yeah.
If you're ballsy enough to initiate Lumen Stella and you just hit the block or something or slow, you punch them very hard.
You're feeling pretty good about that. Okay, so it's a 3-way mix-up. If they're expecting the dive, you might be able to get away with Lumen Stella, but it is pretty risky there.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
Makes sense. And then what about Latius Orbis?
Oh yeah, I guess this is the third big fireball. I guess.
Or should we talk about that one a little bit later? Or when you said fireballs, did you really mean these two?
Yeah, I just meant. Yeah, I guess this is in a whole other category, so we'll get to that later.
Okay, cool. Should we talk about the boosts here, or should we move on to other ultra tools?
Yeah, we can go over the boosts briefly. I mean, they're pretty simple boosts. Well, actually, this one's complicated, but this one's simple. Swift attack, +1 speed, hit gain advantage, add this to gauge. I mean, this is just really good. Usually, +1 speed, hit gain advantage. You see this in a lot of boosts, but rarely do you see also add to gauge. So there's a few these characters that have swift attack. On Vatista, it's just really good. You can +1 speed makes like everything better. Makes it crosses like a cross has the speed of a DP, 7 speed crosses. You can 6 speed assaults on curve dives. +1 speed with Your slow fireballs can make them even on curve. Plus one speed just really good, and you
Right.
get gauge, you get advantage. Pretty self-explanatory, I think.
Right.
If you're in range one, if the opponent's in your face, it's very easy to boost this just because, okay, I'm not going to play Bucharest anymore. The opponent's in my face, so you can just boost swift attack and get a lot of benefit from pretty much anything.
Right. Are you hoping that your opponent is going to pass you the turn back so you can take advantage of all of this stuff, or is it more just like is it just a pressure tool? You're just saying like, okay, hit me, or I'm gonna get my turn back and I'm gonna make you miserable next turn.
It's a really good pressure tool. The plus one speed also makes it really nice on defense. It's just like if Vatista's like a range two and just boosts swift attack, like either you initiate and you lose to 7 speed cross, or you just pass it to her turn and she gets plus one speed hit gain advantage.
Okay.
So it's just like it's a double whammy because speed and advantage means that if you just pass the turn to her, she can take advantage. She can gain advantage
For two
with that
turns in
plus
a
one
row,
speed.
right? Yeah, so she can really mess you up if you leave this in play. So you're looking to use this where if your opponent strikes into you, you have a response ready. And it sounds like usually that response is going to be like making range with cross or brawling in melee if you have the tools for it.
Yeah,
Okay, makes
exactly.
sense. And then
Um,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh no. Well, I don't. I'll let you finish what you were going to say.
I was going to move on to instant flight. So if you had other things to say about swift attack, please go ahead.
Oh no, I'm done with this. Yeah.
Okay. The only thing I was going to say is that I've had a lesson on Merkava, so I know a little bit about instant flight and uh, how scary that can be on his kit. But for people who haven't seen that episode, so you are revealing the top card of your deck, and you are just going as far as that card's power will take you in either direction. Um, what does Vatista use this for?
She uses this either for Burkava used this for his big ultra, right? His what eight X8,
Yeah,
right?
his weird eye defile shenanigans where he's like it he can change the math mid strike and make it hit for way more, right?
Yeah. Um, for her, it's pretty similar use case. Either she does it either for her second copy of Lumen Stella because she can just fly away and then hit you Lumen Stella with from like so for example
Sure. Let me
Batista and the
here.
opponent, right?
We got here
Yeah,
1 second. Let's take
Rizu
our
dummy.
training dummy here. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of situations where you can use instant flight. So instant flight with a second copy of Lumen Stella, you can flip a card and retreat any like if you just retreat two or more, then you can go fly here and then zap them with second copy of Lumen Stella. Um, but the main thing you want to use this for is Lateus Orbis because your gigantic laser, it basically means that even in like melee range, you can just as long as you have the guard, you can just tank it, fly away, and then just zap and just nuke them with a laser.
Right. This instant flight on Lumen Stella, we were talking about how like okay, you can't. This is not safe to dive because your opponent can get out from underneath the range shadow. Weirdly enough, if you're in melee range and have instant flight, Lumen Stella is actually surprisingly safe.
hmm That's right.
Interesting. Okay, and that she doesn't really have anything in her kit that is gonna move you less than two. So you're at least gonna set something up with this. You're gonna be able to get to range three kind of no matter what you do. And any longer than that, it still works for both of these cards.
That's right. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, and of course, like Lateus Orbis has a minimum range of 3, so her having low power is no big deal at all.
Right.
Just retreat 2, and then you can still zap him.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a couple other rules clarifications here. This is a reveal effect. You reveal the top card of your deck. You don't draw it and you don't discard it.
hmm
So you just show them what it is. You put it back down on top of your deck. You're not going to draw it at the end of your turn because you're strike. This is during a strike. You're just going to make space and hit them with your thing, and then it'll still be on the top of your deck next turn. Um,
Correct. Yeah.
does Vatista have any ability to stack her deck, or does she kind of not care because she's like you said, like as long as you can get to range three, it's the thing you're doing is probably going to work just fine.
She has no way to stack her deck, but yeah, it's fine. Yeah, she doesn't need to. She doesn't need to be able to stack their deck to gain benefit from it. The only bad thing you can possibly wall swing from, well, I guess wild reveal from instant flight is block.
Oh,
Block
block,
is the
sure.
absolute worst.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
So play those odds. You can keep that in mind when you play Instant Flight. Just play against
Right.
those odds of randomly whilst you can block.
You got
But
both. You got both blocks in hand already. You're totally safe to go. And you do have to commit your Lumen Stella or Latius Orbis. You put that down first, and then on reveal you take your before effect, and then you get your movement, right? So you do have to commit first.
yeah, you did have to choose advance or retreat first.
Okay.
Well, actually, no, you can see it first before choosing advance or retreat.
But you do have to put your card down. I'm sorry, you have to put your attack down first, and then you see what's on top of your deck. So you couldn't see. All right, I know for a fact I'm not pulling block off the top of my deck. Therefore, I'm playing Lumen Stella with instant flight. You have to put Lumen Stella down first.
Yeah, sadly, there's no such guarantee. Yeah,
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
so yeah, you got to play the odds. Makes sense. But so this is and we just talked about how rewarding Lumen Stella is to hit. Um, there isn't any real conflict between a before effect and your character ability. So you could strike with your character ability at range 1 with instant flight down and just get everything you want out of it, right?
yeah. It's possible. It's totally possible. You can do like in this range exactly. You can character UA strike with instant flight. Oh, you reveal the 4. Sure, 4
Yep.
Lumen Stella, push 2, draw 2. Yeah.
Sure. Makes sense. And
So it's
I,
very strong boost. Yeah.
I guess with Lumen Cell, it's possible to go out of range. Maybe. Is it? You don't have anything above 6, so you're probably safe. So if you go here, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that 1, 2, 3, 6, 7. You
There
could
are
you
rare
could
cases you'll miss.
you could
Yeah.
conceivably run all the way out of range of this, but not of this. Okay. But in general, this is just a great way to make space and hammer somebody with a projectile from close up.
hmm And
Okay.
I think one more use case you could use with instant flight is also interesting, which is you can advance a bunch with instant flight with a slow and hit them. You can also the one thing I like to do with instant flight is definitely experiment with this boost because this boost is very interesting. But you can also range 1 spike with it as well. So one way to do it is basically like it depends on the positioning, but like for say an opponent like here, and then you just flip the top of your deck, and you basically can make your spike hit no matter what because
Oh, because
you
you
can
could
just
just go in the
advance it right
corner.
to the corner
And you
and you
have
smack them.
a solid wall here that means you wouldn't, even if you pulled a sweep and you wouldn't go all the way over here, you just land right here.
Exactly. As long as you can prevent yourself from overshooting, overshooting with movements,
Right.
you can pair this with spike and pretty much have a very hit them pretty guaranteed.
Okay. That makes sense. Cool. And again, those don't quite make a mix up, but it's more just like well, I got the spike in my hand. I don't have the other copy of Lumen Stella. Let's play the spike play instead, and it'll probably be okay.
Yeah,
Okay, makes
exactly.
sense. Cool. All right, so that's the very brief specials kit for Vatista. What do we do now?
Yeah.
How do we break these up? Do we have like payout and utility? Like, I don't know enough about the kit to be able to guide us here. How do you want to cover these guys?
Hmm. Um, I guess we can rank them by. Actually, it's hard. I mean, the thing is, all her ultras and specials. I mean, all her ultras have pretty good use.
Okay.
But I guess we can like this is deserves its own special
This can
category.
be
But these are pretty.
our reward at the end. This can be the big culmination one.
hmm It's
Okay.
what you play Batista for. Well, one of the reasons I would presume is for this card.
Is the big laser. All right, let's make him wait for that one. Let's just go in this order then. Tell me about
Sure,
transference.
sure. Yeah. So of course Batista has cheap 1 gauge ultras and 2 gauge ultras.
Yep.
So we can start with transference. Pretty standard mid speed. I think a slightly better mid speed than some others because it's range 2 to 3, 4 speed. It's just slightly below curve at range 3. But it's pretty good reward. I mean, it's 4 damage, ignore guard, so it beats a lot of things actually, except for
Sure.
defensive assault. Um, After advance 2, draw 1. So with Batista's UA, this is a draw 2. Um, it's a nice little mix of options she has with transference. with some of her other options like Zahishio.
Right.
Um, and it's pretty solid. I mean, when you EX this, it becomes on curve. It's really nice. What else can I say? The advance 2 can help you escape the corner as well. So if you're stuck in a corner, you can just transfer out. Keep like even if you miss with it, it's not a big deal because say they cross out, for example, at range 3, the default answer to the range 3 makes something just to cross away.
Right.
But if you use Vatista UA, it's totally fine. I mean, you still advance 2 and you draw 2.
Right.
So you don't mind whiffing with this. The
Right.
worst case scenario is you play transference and
And
they
get
stun you out
stunned.
of it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
they just play something faster and stun you.
Right.
But it's pretty solid. I mean, it's better than Spike in most cases, except Spike beats block. That's pretty much it.
Sure.
The Nor armor is pretty. Of course, it does have Nor armor as well as Nor guard. And one other thing is that keep in mind that as long as you have one thing to keep in mind for Vatista in general is that as long as you have at least like 1 or 2 gauge, she's a very capable wild swinger. You can just invalidate most of her kit when you wild swing.
Sure. Okay.
So it's not uncommon for her to just I don't know what I'm going to do in defense. I'll just flip. Oh, transference, great! I beat your Spike or I beat your sweep.
This works just fine. Right. Okay. Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. I'm also noticing. So this is a 1 gauge ultra that let's say I'm in this situation here. I've hit with Migo already. All right, strike, putting down transference, validate. I hit. I'm actually force positive because I've replaced a special engage with an ultra engage. So a 1 gauge ultra that adds itself to your gauge afterward is like it's not quite free, but it's like almost free. Like this is if you can hit with this, it's kind of replacing itself or even more, right?
Yeah, it gives you more effective force, which is important for this character. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool.
And of course,
It's very cheap, but in some ways it's like a benefit to hit with it for force economy reasons.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's a good thing you mentioned about spending gauge because I will get to it in a bit. But knowing what to spend gauge as Vatista is very important.
Okay.
Yeah, because she will get a lot of gauge, and of course you have to figure out what you want to spend from it.
Right. Right.
So definitely, this is just a solid mid speed. The boost charge attack +2 power when you advance or retreat, add this to gauge. This is pretty much like a side grade to fierce because sometimes you might lose the +2 power if your attack has a before advance or retreat.
Right.
But if you play this charge attack with like cross, it's really good. If you have after movements, you get the most value of a charge attack because you get +2 power, and then you advance or retreat as an after, so you get the
Right.
best of both worlds.
Right. Okay.
Because you just
And it'll add itself to your gauge. So you want to play it on cross. You can play it on the other copy of Transvorance. In fact,
you can. I was about to get to the fact that actually 3 over 5 specials have after movements, and this synergizes with something for ultra boosts that add to gauge when you move.
Okay, cool. So you can, as long as you are timing, setting that timing up. Don't play it on assault or dive. But you can get both sides out of this card by stacking it with something that does have after movement.
Yeah,
Okay.
and she has a pretty good amount of after movements. Yeah,
Okay.
so
And
good synergy there.
the other 2 boosts that we've talked about so far, you mentioned that Swift Attack is kind of good in the points where Mika Rosero isn't so good because what are you going to do with that speed at extreme ranges? Same with Instant Flight. Like there's a pretty serious, a use case disjunction between these 2 sides of the card. For Transvorance, it's like, how do you evaluate which side of this card you're using at any given time?
Basically, it's kind of like when you are not able to play Transformers. Actually, it's pretty simple. Like at melee range, having threatening fierce is pretty good at melee range. You can +2 power at long range as well, so you just get more damage out of your fireballs.
Right.
So it's pretty nice whenever you don't have the opportunity to play Transformers.
Okay. Makes sense. So you just put it down as something, a good neutral boost to do on your turn when you're threatening that cross at range 2 or something like that.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, exactly.
Makes sense. All right. How about
Armabellum.
Armabellum?
Yeah, the other 1 gauge ultra. This is pretty interesting one. 1 3 2 2 5. The stats look absolutely crap, but that's
Yeah.
okay because because the hit effect is add up to 3 gate cards from your hand to your gauge for each card added this way plus 1 power. So
Okay.
this is a very good way to accelerate her game plan because if she has a lot of gauge, she has even more resources and gauge to play with to play Letea's Orbis
Okay.
or play the boost of Letea's Orbis. So
Or
this is
whatever I'm doing with all of my gauge.
yeah, there's a lot of ways you can spend your gauge or your exceed side.
Right.
So Armabellum is just it's basically like a standard slow shape, but it's pretty much effectively 5 power because you pretty much almost always want to get the full +3 power with this.
Right.
Um, and then plus, not to mention that it gives you a lot of gauge. So you spend 1 gauge and then you basically get 2 +2. You get how to say this? You spend 1 gauge and then you gain 3 gauge when you play this. So it's
And then Armabellum goes to the gauge on
and then
top.
Armabellum itself
Yeah.
adds to gauge. Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
you're
So you go
you're 3 gauge positive. One of them's an ultra, but they're coming from your hand. So the resources are moving around, but you're not like generating force out of nowhere.
Yeah. So you still do have to, yeah, of course, spend for your hand. So it's not like you get free resources out of it.
Right.
But so this is actually so the hit effect, yeah, you can just but it's pretty how to say this? It's actually like I guess it's the Nago Ryuki, like we talked about, like choosing which to discard. Choosing what to put in gauge with this is actually pretty easy. You just put away tools that you don't really need right now. Like in melee range, I'm not gonna plan on diving. I'm not gonna plan on playing spike and melee. So I could
Sure.
just go dive, spike, maybe block. Don't really need block.
Right.
Or you can just add ultra that you're not playing, that you don't plan to play into gauge. That's totally fine as well. Um, yeah, so pretty. I would say the decision to choose which cards to add in gauge armor bellum is not hard, and it
Okay.
gets you a lot of resources.
Sure.
Um,
And you have enough card draw in your kit here and there that you can probably find a way to make up that resource expenditure from your hand pretty quick.
yeah, Vatista draws a lot of cards. Oh yeah, of
Okay.
course. Tossing fireballs from melee. I mean, your melee range
Sure.
tossing fireballs into gauge is totally
Yeah,
very
you
easy
you
to
don't
do as
you're not
well.
going to have anything to do with this for a little while yet. Okay.
hmm
I'm also noticing that the stat line here, doing this on defense looks pretty risky because this is low enough guard that it would lose clean to sweep.
Yeah, playing Arbel on defense, you just have to be careful. If you play this on defense, you better hope they're not playing sweep. Yeah,
Okay.
5 guard is a little bit shy. It's safe from a lot of things, but it's shy against sweep or
Right.
other. But there's some dangerous mid speeds that are like 6 power or something like that. You have to be
Right.
careful of that. Yeah,
Okay. Makes sense.
but initiating Arbel is a lot safer. Yeah.
I've been looking this whole time as we've been talking, like obviously you mentioned Lumen Stella having extra utility from Batista's character ability. This is the first one, or rather, these two are the first one where we have advances or retreats on them. So are you getting more out of like advancing 3 versus advancing 2 is not going to probably make you dodge anything you weren't already going to dodge with Transference, for example. Um, and closing or retreating to actually might at
Actually,
extreme.
it's actually increased by 2. So you actually close the retreat 3, and you
Oh,
advance
right,
4.
and advance far. That actually is a big difference. And now you're,
Yeah.
if I mean, probably not close up because you're still not dodging sweep or something, but you could use this to make more space on this side. But it isn't like you're not really using this as a dodge on your exceed side. It doesn't sound like.
No, not really. I mean, if you play Transference, I mean, you would stun them anyway, hopefully. So,
Oh, right. Ignore guard. You're setting up for your next strike then. Okay.
yeah, but Advance 4 does help you get out the corner and just like go far away. And of course,
Okay.
being able to retreat 3 of Armabellum is nice because you can dodge slows. Personally, I haven't done Vatista UA on Exceed Side Strike of Armabellum, but you
Okay.
can.
But
And you
that
can just move a bunch with after.
right. But also, I mean, the kind of thing that you are the kind of thing that you're dodging It'd be sweep, right? It'd be sweep on. It'd be a defensive sweep from your opponent because this is a 2-speed attack. You're probably not going to be dodging very much.
Yeah, you
So
only be dodging slows pretty much.
okay,
Yeah.
should I basically just assume then that the majority of things that I'm going to be doing with Vatista's character ability on Exceed side are for setting up for later, not really like messing with strike interactions?
Um. Yeah, I would say like I mean, Vatista Exceed UA is just you use it when you think it'll help you close at the game or helps you set up for a big payout.
Okay.
Otherwise, it is a lot to ask for to flip and also spend 2 gauge. Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. Cool. Just wanted to, now that we're getting into some things that have advanced retreat on them, I just wanted to check.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's fair. I mean, but after close retreat 1, it's still not useless. I mean, it's a little bit of tiny movements, but it's still good because it synergizes with all her after when you advance retreat at the gauge. So if she
Right.
has this boosted, this boosted, this boosted, she will just get the benefit and also get extra gauge out of it. So
Right.
the after low movement is still very good.
Okay. Makes
Um,
sense. How
so
about
solid sweep like
Crimson Wings?
Crimson Wings is basically it's a nice little like it's similar to charge attack when you battery add to gauge, but instead of +2 power you get +1 speed. Obviously +1 speed offers different benefits to +2 power. +2 power is you want to just if you already have something that is very easy to hit with and you can pay out with +2 power. +1 speed makes it so that you can you know um, you can do things like +6 speed assault on defense, 7 speed cross away, and you get and you get the gauge. The nice thing about this over +2 power is that speed is only calculated at the very start of strike before you actually do stuff.
Oh, so you
So
don't need to wait for the after movement to have to avoid dodging this choice then. So I heard you say assault. I was like, wait a minute, but we just got done talking about with charge attack, you don't do it with assault. But this, you don't care about the speed after you've already started your turn.
exactly. So it makes her dives, assaults, crosses, and some other things even better with that little +1 speed. So it's really good. And yeah, again, like you don't care about a +1 speed going away
Right.
after you've already calculated who goes first because of speed.
Right, sure. Yeah.
So
You've
it's
already gotten
like,
the benefit out of it at that point.
yep. So if you just move at any point in the strike, you will just get, a free nice
Free
gauge,
free
and
gauge. Okay.
it just was speeds. Yeah.
How often do you use this boost relative to when you use Armabellum?
Mm, good question. Crimson Wings is a nice little how to say this. Because the reason you get boosted in a lot of situations and it benefits. Armabellum is more like, okay, I can make a lot of gauge with this. I can get or I can trade with the opponent pretty okay in melee range with Armabellum. Or you can just wall swing it and just be like, okay, this works. I'm just gonna gain a bunch of gauge and deal 5 damage.
Right.
So like Armabellum is a nice little like a melee. If you it's like another melee option comparable to Sweep Focus that gives you a lot of gauge.
Okay.
So if you find yourself in melee and you don't mind spending a bunch of cards, well, quote unquote spending cards from hand to your gauge, then you can play Armabellum. But otherwise, like if you want to trend stuff in mid range or just with trend, 7 speed crosses, then you boost this.
Okay. So
Very
and
different uses.
most
Yeah.
of the stuff that you're going to be threatening with Crimson Wings seems like the kind of stuff that is going to move you either from or to melee. You play Armabellum when you're pretty comfortable staying in melee for a little while.
Yeah, Armabellum's, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Armabellum's your melee fighting tool. +1 speed is basically I'm just gonna come in or go out with cross. Yeah.
Makes sense. Sounds good. Okay. So those are our two, like, so cheap that they might not even be these costs might be fake. This one especially is like, this one gains you resources, doesn't spend them.
Yeah, this one is, yeah, it gives you it's part of her Vatista's it's a pretty core part of Vatista's kit because it gets her so much gauge at once. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Where should we go from here? We go to Zahishio?
Let's do Ruber first actually.
Okay.
Tahishio is a pretty crazy one. Ruber Angelus is a first 2 gauge ultra here. So 1 to 2, 6, 2, 1, 3. It's like a flash. It's basically a flash kick shape.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah, flash kicks have like pretty low speed. Have after movements. Have a push. It's like when the opponent comes in, you can punish them with a flash kick. Um, you do have to be careful with Ruber. Oh yeah, there we go. Flash kick shape. But the thing about Ruber is that Ruber is nice because it's very like Vatista doesn't have a lot of big power. Only like her power is pretty concentrated on certain attacks.
Right.
Ruber being one of them. So it's having a big, nice 6 power stat swing. That stick is nice, but you might find it tricky to play because it is like 2 speed and also only 4 total defenses.
Right.
So it can actually be kind of surprisingly tricky to play. Like you can lose to random stuff. Like for example, the opponent initiates sweep and you play Ruber Angelus in defense. Oh shit.
Right.
The opponent dives you and you try to Ruber Angelum.
There's plenty of five power specials that go speed 3 or faster. That's not super uncommon.
Yeah. So when you play Ruber Angelus, you have to be careful because it's very rewarding when you land with it because of the damage. Hit push 2, of course, Vatista, you can push 3, you can destroy sweep.
Right.
Push 3. After you may advance 4. You can this also beats focus as well because you can push them with focus, you can push them, but then you can advance out of the range of focus.
Oh, sure. You can run away from them if you've got any board behind them. Interesting. Okay. So it's a mid speed. It could conceivably beat both slow normals. But it's a very slow mid speed and it's not super safe.
That's right. Yeah. It's just very rewarding to land with this. And oftentimes as Vatista, I've seen Vatista. At first, like Ruber Angelus was a card I kind of poo-pooed away at first when I started playing Vatista. But the more I played Vatista, I was like, okay, this card is actually just it's solid because it's 6 power.
Right.
Simple as that. And you can sometimes afford to spend the 2 gauge, and if you miss with it, it's not a big deal, because you generate so much gauge.
Right. Sure.
So when you find a good opportunity to play this, definitely play this and get the cash into 6 power. The best times to play it is when you have like you have something boosted with this. Like for example, Superior with Ruber Angelus means that 7 power crushes sweep. It's 3 speed. It basically solves all your problems stat wise. You get you get proper you go up to 3 speed. You have basically 6 total defenses, and then you're 7 power. So Superior is really good. +1 speed with this is also really nice as well. It means that you can just play this on defense pretty solidly. Just +1 speed Ruber Angelus on defense. You can reliably beat all your slows. +2 power. I mean, it just makes it even more rewarding.
Right.
But Swift attack as well, I find it good. In the same vein, I also like to play just EX Ruber Angelus when just like from hand sometimes. The same vein where, because like I said, Superior solves all those problems.
Right. Sure.
Like EX Ruber Angelus is basically the same thing.
A natural EX. Now you can do it as a surprise, all that stuff.
Yeah, it's a good EX to whip out on defense as a surprise and just like crush them because it's so much power.
Sure. Makes sense. Okay, cool. Yeah. Then how about restriction?
Yeah, restriction is an interesting one. It also, of course, has the when you advance tree add this to gauge. It gives you a little hit, push, or pull 1. You might think it's not much, but it's actually can be very beneficial for Vatista because it can mean that, for example, you can boost this turn 1. The opponent dives you, just push them in Mikura Sale, and their dive no longer hits you anymore.
Sure. Okay.
So you can make them with the push or pull 1.
Right.
You can also it also synergizes with her UA as well. She can push or pull 2 with her UA, even on attacks that don't normally hit push or pull at all. So you can
right. So this adds a new trigger for her character ability to boost up by 1.
Exactly.
Okay.
It gives her another way to take advantage of her UA because it gives an additional hit effect on any attack. Yeah. So this push or pull 1 may not seem like much, but yeah.
What happens what happens when you add this? When you put you boost restriction, they pass the turn back to you. You play grasp. Now you are push or pull 1 or 2 with your character ability, makes it 3, and then push or pull 1, add to your character ability. You could push 5.
You can push 5. You can push 5 with this.
That's kind of fun.
It is pretty absurd. Yeah.
All right. So just chuck them all the way across the board. Start throwing Lumen at them.
Yeah, and it's basically it's a very interesting boost because it's just a utility boost because it's just like it doesn't give you any stats whatsoever.
Right.
But if you can if the push or pull one will benefit you, basically you make them miss or you just send them into where you send them flying across the board, then you can definitely play restriction. And of course, when you advance retreat at this gauge, even if you don't get the full benefit of the hit, if you just move in any sort of way in the strike, you will still add to gauge.
Okay. And this one would be another one where you are trying to get after movement in order to make this work because the hit effect you would deny yourself
Yeah,
the push or pull if you
mhm.
moved.
Yeah. So if you dive or assault, if you advance, yeah, if you have it before movement, it will go away. The hit effect
Right.
will go away. So you have to keep that in mind.
Okay. And
Um,
now that we've mentioned all of these boosts, it's probably worth asking. So we've talked about this in context of in strike movement like dive and assault. If I just play air dash and I retreat 3 when I have one of these boosts in play, it just goes to my gauge right then.
exactly. Yeah. If you
Okay.
move in any sort of way outside the strike, then it will go away.
Okay.
Um,
As long if my opponent moves me, that doesn't count, right?
it does not count. Yeah.
Cool. Gotcha. All right. Cool.
It's only self movements. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, Batista doesn't have the problem though of the opponent just moving away to diffuse your boost because it's just like as Batista, for example, you know, he's with Ryu in melee. Well, I guess Ryu is a bad example because he has a Dokkan. Let's say a character that doesn't have a fireball. So like you, for example, you boost plus your power in melee, very scary. It's like, oh,
Right.
okay, like, but when you advance retreat, you go away. So I'll just retreat a bunch.
And then
Haha, what are you gonna do now?
yeah, you just nuke them from orbit, right?
Dummy, I have
Sure.
fireballs. Yeah. So it's
Gotcha.
just like
Gotcha.
you don't. Basically, the advance retreat will helps you a lot more than it doesn't because the opponent can't move away to defuse it, assuming you have any fireballs on board.
Right.
You can still take advantage of it fully.
And
Yeah.
you have enough fireballs that you're probably going to have something somewhere in your deck that you can make them scared to run away from you.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. So yeah, but of course, it is good to keep in mind that when you boost these, you should already be in a nice position to take advantage of it because
Right.
if you're boosting this and then you want to move afterwards, you basically just defeat the purpose of boosting it. You pretty much just did a delay key charge, I guess.
Right. So in that case, unless you're trying to make your opponent run away from you or something, or strike into you, in that case, you're trying to capitalize on a position that you're already happy with when you play one of these boosts.
Yep. Basically, you
Okay.
already have it. So you're sitting in that spot ready to go with the stats that you boosted or the hit effect.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Uh, now that we teased this for a second, now I'm really curious about it. Tell me about Zahishio.
Yes. Okay. This card is amazing. Both sides of this card. I would say Zahichio, both the boost and attack are central to her game plan. It's a pretty gnarly boost. I mean, pretty gnarly ultra in general.
Okay.
Okay. So 1 to 2 2 6, just standard, it's on curve cross shape. Is a reverse cross. Well, not. I guess it is a reverse cross because you instead of retreating, you push.
Right.
Um, Cost 2 gauge, but as a before effect, you add all cards in your hand into your gauge, and you gain advantage,
You gain
and you push
advantage
them at once.
as a before effect. Interesting.
Yes. So, I have had random situation. I think it happened. This interaction. Usually, I hit with this. I think there's one weird interaction. I don't remember exactly what was. I played this and it didn't hit for some weird reason, but I just gained a bunch of gauge to gain advantage anyway. Very
Right.
funny.
That's weird. Okay.
Anyway, yeah. So even if you whiff this, it's totally fine. But obviously, 99% of the time you want to hit with this.
Right. And
Um,
it doesn't seem hard to hit with either.
yeah, it's very easy to hit with this. You know, DP's notwithstanding, you just very easy to hit with this. Like Vatista range 2, if she has 2 gauge, this is the card people watch out for. They try to play focus and response
Okay.
because if she hits this with her UA, for example, so she pushes 3, she can push 4 with her UA,
Right.
and she gains. It just accelerates her game so much because it gets everything in hand goes to gauge and she gets advantage. Obviously, you do have to keep in mind this before effect. So make sure that what you have in hand isn't like particularly valuable or you don't mind giving up because they will be, it is mandatory. Add every single card from your hand to gauge. You cannot choose. You just, if you commit to Zahishio, you make sure that you're okay with it.
Right.
But it is very rewarding because you gain advantage and you push them very far, and you gain a bunch of gauge. It's just it does everything for you in one card.
Right.
Um,
So
I
how
guess
are so you've got no cards in hand and advantage. Is your next play just prepping? Or do you CC some of that gauge that you already put down? Like how do you take advantage of this?
the advantage, yeah. So advantage with empty hand, you might think like, okay, what the hell do I do with empty hand? Yeah, I mean the main there's quite a few things you could do, but the main thing I do is just change cards based on the normals. I mean, based on ultras engage. So you can go like, for example, okay, an example, just my hand's this, okay, and then you
Sure.
go, okay, I'm gonna play Zahishio, spend 2 gauge, all these go to gauge,
Right.
and then Zahishio itself goes to gauge, and you
Right.
gain advantage.
And
So you
you
have
then
all
you
these engage, and you just CC these two ultras, for example.
so okay, so you
CC
CC
4, and you draw 5.
you draw 5 and now you've gone from having 2 gauge to 4 gauge and you've pushed your opponent 4 and you've gained advantage on top of that. Okay, you sold me. That's really
Yeah,
scary.
it's actually it's really good. Like it just gates you. Yeah, like you said, like I started from 2 gauge, but now I have 4 gauge, and I also have 5 cards, 5 new cards, and also my opponent's all the way over here.
Yep.
So it did everything for me in that one strike.
Okay. Yeah,
It was
that's
a
really really
Hishio.
scary.
Yeah, as long as you know that you're spending the cards in your hand going to gauge, then just go for it.
Right.
The main counterplay for the opponent is either just they have a DP, a 7-speed DP, or they have focus. A nice little thing I like to do is Vatista is if I just like Vatista UA strike, um, pretend I'm playing Zahishio. The opponent usually will have a focus does amazing normal, so opponents will love to hold on to focus, especially against zoners.
Sure.
They don't want to
And
get pushed.
especially people who push and pull as much as Vatista does.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I really want to keep focus against Vatista. I don't want her to be pushing me all over the place, causing me to miss.
Right.
So I want to keep focus. But like at Rage 2, you can just initiate without fear, pretend to initiate Zahishio without fear, but then you end up playing transfer runs or spike,
Yep.
and you just completely destroy their focus or their block. You just completely ruin them. And like
Sure.
if it's the case, like she gets transfer runs, your focus, and then she crushed it, and then she's now out of the corner, and she also draws too.
Right.
So like this is a very potent mix-up in range 2.
You could even use
Yes.
Ruber Angelus to advance past the focus and dodge it.
Yeah. So it's like she can mix up with these two, with the very obvious quote unquote obvious Ahishio, because
Right.
she will so she has one of the cards where it's like it's very obvious when she wants to play it, but then she can obviously because of the threat of Ahishio, it makes sneaking in a mix-up option that much stronger at range 2.
Sure. So all and obviously, I mean, you still have the threat of cross, which for a zoner that's very powerful. But for these cards in particular, these 3, all of them kind of get activated by how afraid my opponent's going to be of Zahishio.
Exactly, yeah. It gives you
Gotcha.
more opportunities to use your mid speed just because Zahishio is it's just like, okay, I don't want to be pushed by Zahishio all the way across the end of the board.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really scary. I'm also noticing that there's a big 3 on the boost here, and
Oh,
plus 3 power is something that I'm always interested in learning about. So tell me about Curse Commandment.
Curse Commandment, yeah. So this boost is incredible. I mean, it's one of the like I said, both sides of the cards are amazing. So this part's no exception.
Right.
Plus 3 power, strike of a card face up for any gauge. So obviously, plus 3 power strike face up. As long as the opponent doesn't dodge it, it's very good value. 6 power grasps, 6 power crosses, 7 power assaults,
Yep.
9 power sweeps. I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Yep.
You could do, and also you could do, like I said, how I mentioned that she only has 4 specials, fireballs.
Yeah.
Curse Commandment face up fireball, and your opponent can't do much about it. It's totally a legit line of play. You can just go Lubin Stella. You play Lubin Stella, you push 2, draw 2, and opponent, okay, they block it and then they prep.
Right.
Well, big mistake, buddy, because now I could do 8 power Lubin Stella, and you're all the way here, and
Right.
now you get bodied.
And you can't get out of the way anymore. It's late game. You don't have dives anymore. There's nothing you can do about this. Just take 8. And also, you don't even have to hit with this. You could have put it in your gauge some other way.
Exactly, yeah. So it's just like there's so many ways for Vatista to gain gauge, and Curse Commandment alone, like, it's a big reason of why you have to make sure a big part of playing Vatista well is just like keeping nice options in gauge just to trend Curse Commandment. So like, if you're spending gauge, maybe you want to keep that grass engaged, maybe you want to keep your fireballs engaged before you spend them,
Right.
because it's nice to always look for the opportunity to get a nice +3 power face up strike and just destroy them.
Right. And
Um,
and sometimes with +3 power, depending on the board state, depending on what your opponent has left in their deck, this could be completely guaranteed.
yeah, like this definitely gets stronger the longer the game goes, because the opponent will have less options to deal with your face up thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
Uh, so it's like, when you spend gauge, make sure to just spend cards that you don't really want to play face up with +2 power. Like, spend your spikes, spend your dives, spend your blocks from gauge,
Okay.
because you want to keep the option available for you to do +2 power face up whatever.
Okay. So I'm looking for a lot of gauge as Vatista, but I'm also looking for specific things in gauge. And mostly what I'm looking for are just good, consistent attacks that I can confirm this +3 power with to up my either win a strike completely clean for free or just increase value on an easy to land strike like a grasp.
Yeah, like the easy land things like grass, face up cross, face up Mikuru Sail, like suddenly Mikuru Sail's value goes way up when it's
Sure.
just 5 power, full ward, 5 speed,
Sure. Yeah, that's
and it gives you a
that's
card.
that's quite scary. You can't use this. You can't use Curse Commandment at the same time as your character ability, though, right? This is a now strike, and this is an action.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
But it's not a big deal. I mean, +3 power more than makes up for
Yeah, simply stun them instead.
whatever.
You don't have to throw them out of range.
Yeah. Well, why not just kill them instead,
Right,
+3 power
exactly.
is very strong, yeah. If you
Okay,
compare this with UA, it will be too disgusting.
sure.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay,
So,
so that seems like an exciting. Both sides of this card seem like a very exciting reason to play Vatista, and I can also, hit with one side of this card later in the game. I'll have the other, and I can pull all those things out that I put in my gauge for my hand. And now one of them has +3 power.
yeah, it's like if you land the Hishio, then it's like, okay, it sets up for your second copy of the Hishio's Curse Commandment, because just like, yeah, keeping fireballs engaged is very nice. Just whip them out with +3 power
Right,
at
and
any
and
point.
and
Yeah.
to just accelerate you've gotten your win condition now. They're at range. You have tons of gauge. Time to turn all that into damage. This is how the exchange rate on gauge to damage is from this card.
Yep, exactly.
Makes
It's
sense.
like Zeshisho's a nice setup, and Curse Commandment is a nice payoff.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And how about we've teased it twice now. Please tell me
Woohoo!
about the big dumb laser.
Finally, yes, yes. Though, well, one big reason you might be want to play Batista is for this big, stupid, dumb laser. 3 to 8, 6 to 3 5. For 3 gauge, 3 gauge is pretty cheap for what you get out of this.
Right.
Because it's 6 power on the surface, but then you look at the hit effect. Spend all cards in your hand engage as force. For each force spent, +1 power. The opponent may spend any amount of force for +1 armor each.
Okay.
Um,
That's ridiculous.
yes, it's absurd. So this can go up to extremely high levels of power just out of nowhere, because she has, she has 5 ultras. I mean, she has 10 force. She has a much more force than the average character.
Sure.
Um, so she's swimming in force. So basically, the fact that the opponent can spend force for +1 armor is just a small consolation. It's
Right.
just like, okay, how much do I want to spend to not die? Because Vatista will be outforcing you because she
Right.
has so much force sitting there, and this could get to ridiculous levels, like +10 power. It could be
Yeah.
like
It just takes
crazy.
16. So, like, when we talk about a high power attack in Exceed, the number I usually use is like 8. 8 is like a big number in Exceed. This could be like 15 to 20 before my opponent factors in their force and their armor. So, like, either way, I'm probably hitting for 10 with this minimum. It seems like.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like this could be read as a 10 damage ultra, because just like, okay, they won't have enough force to outspend you,
Right.
basically.
And also, I mean, if they do, it's not like they just get it for free. They're spending all of their resources to armor through it at a pretty bad rate. Like if you compare that
Yeah,
to block, where you can spend any amount of force for +2 armor each per force spent, they're getting a very bad return on investment for this.
exactly. It's very expensive to block this with armor.
Okay.
So and of course, you have to factor in the fact that Vatista and you are like, really far away when this happens.
How are they going to
So
move in now? Right.
yeah, it's like, okay, you spend all your force for armor. Okay, maybe you spend literally everything, and now you only took like 6 damage. But
Right.
now it's like, now what? You're all the way here.
Right. And
You get
and
to prep, and then fight
and
when you come in.
you've also spent everything, but you've spent everything on your terms in order to kill them. So if
Yes, and even
if this doesn't kill them, are you in trouble though? Because now you have nothing.
uh, I mean, it depends on what options you have left in deck. But honestly, even if you don't kill them, it's totally fine because you can just go. Because you add Latia's orbit to. Oh shit! It flew away.
Where did it go? There
You
it
add
is.
Latia's orbit to gauge. Yeah, yeah, it is to gauge with you hit with it, and then you can just do something like, okay, now you have nothing because you spent everything on hit effect, so you can just go
Right.
prep, and then like as soon as you see like 2 ultras, then you can just go, okay, I'm going to CC 4 and draw 5.
You're probably gonna hit ultras because you have so many ultras. You can reload really quickly with a change cards.
Yeah, Vatista change cards action is really nice on her. She gets so much force. Definitely abuse it.
Okay.
Yeah. So amazing payout ultra. Latia's Orbis is the cream of the crop, and obviously you can set it up with your pushes. You can set up with retreating away from cross. You can set up with instant flight. So it gives you the ample opportunity to basically land Latia's Orbis.
Okay. And
As Vatista.
a lot of times with an ultra this flashy and this ridiculous, it's actually kind of impractical to do. Is Lateus Orbis like a real like real tournament strategy you would go for this card?
Yeah, it's a very viable. Not only is it very fun, it's also very viable. Yeah, I mean
Right.
it is.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's not a meme. Like there's some ultras that are just like, okay, this ultra is clearly a meme, right? Like it's clearly like you're just doing this to mess around for fun, and you
Sure.
hit a bit like cool.
And it's
But
funny
this is
because it hit for 12, but you just it's on
it's
Akuma's
like heavily
ultras.
protected.
Yeah.
It's like heavily protected buttons. Like really hard to hit this, but it did a bunch. It's like it's
Right.
hype.
And most of the time you're probably not really gonna go for it. This one is a real threat.
Yeah, it's very practical and very flashy and very powerful.
Okay.
Yeah, because there are many ways to just set this up where you can just zap them with. Um, yeah, and even with like +1 speed, even like little things like +1 speed, it's like, oh nice, now they can't dive on defense. They will get
Good thing
cooked.
you have two speed boosts now. You can probably make this work.
Yep, exactly. The
Okay.
little yeah, it's surprisingly easy. If you work for it, it's surprisingly easy to land Latea's Orbis
Okay.
if you work for it. Obviously, the
Makes
opponent
sense.
may try to counterplay it by just always spending force and hugging you, but you can instant flight them. Like instant flight is the big way to make it unreactable, basically.
Oh wow.
Um,
So yeah, so instant flight. We talked about instant flight with this. Now that I've seen how scary this is, instant flight with Latias Orbis looks awesome.
yeah, it basically yeah, it makes it means that no matter how much the opponent will try and hug you, if you get off instant flight with his Orbis, you just zoop, zap,
Right.
and there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do about it.
You can mess them up pretty bad. Okay. Cool. That's terrifying. Uh, tell me a little bit about autonomic nerve.
Yeah, so autonomic nerve is basically, this is the big payout ultra. This is also the big payout ultra boost.
Okay.
It fulfills the same niche where if you have a lot of resources, it says hit spend up to 6 gauge or +1 power each, then add this to gauge.
Okay.
Very good boost. If you're sitting on a bunch of gauge and you can just boost autonomic nerve and trend, plus 5 power, +6 power, some ridiculous number on like, you can do 9 power grasp, and you also get this to gauge as well.
Right.
Really good boost. Quite comparable to the Ultra, just because just some situations where it's just like, okay, I really cannot get off Lateus. That's fine. The opponent's hugging me in my face. That's okay.
Sure.
I'm gonna use autonomic nerve and
They
tread
have
something ridiculous power.
they have a attacks at range 4 or greater can't hit you style dodge on them. You're too afraid to put everything into Lateus Orbis. You can do something else.
Yeah, Autonomic Nerve on the other hand is like Latias Orbis is a like decent commitment because you spend 3 gauge.
Right.
Autonomic Nerve is basically no commitment. It's just like, okay, if I hit with them, if I hit, great. They're gonna take a bajillion. I mean, it's very easy for me to spend gauge. It's very easy for me to gain gauge. The resource cost is no problem at all.
Right.
But if you miss with Autonomic Nerve in play, that's fine as well. You don't lose anything out of it. Yeah, it's very Latias Orbis requires some commitments. Autonomic Nerve is basically no commitments
Right.
unless you know you just have to have some gauge stocked up.
And you
So
probably will because you're Vatista, and if the game has gone on for any amount of time at all, you've probably got gauge.
yep. So it's
Okay.
very very good, very good boost to have. And of course you're the season with Tech Hit as well. Discard a boosting plate and strike. If for example you're in this position, you boost Autonomic Nerve. If you try to boost light, okay, Tech Hit, 9 power grasp.
Right. Yeah, just
So,
you have ways to diffuse the little counterplay they might have to such a scary boost. Okay.
yeah, you can shut down their counterplay if
Okay.
they try counter boost to stop it. So very good boost. Yeah, it's a very good payout because Batista with oldest gauge sometimes she wonders like what I'm gonna do with the gauge. Well, let's
Right.
say it's Orbis or this boost. Yeah, there's a good way to spend gauge.
So we have a way to 2 ways to put a huge amount of to turn a huge amount of gauge all at once into big damage. But we also have in Curse Commandment a way to turn specific things in gauge into slightly less big damage, but still pretty big damage. +3 power ain't nothing. Um, of these payouts that we're talking about here, which one do you typically go for, or is this just like a matchup thing and a player preference thing?
Um, well, I guess it is up to preference, just kind of up to preference because Batista has a lot of ways to spend resources.
Right.
But yeah, I do like to, in most games, I do like to go for either Letheus Orbis or the boost on this. And
Okay.
then, meanwhile, while I'm building up to this, I'm keeping decent options engaged so I can do +3 power face up at any
Right.
good opportune time.
Right.
So it's just like while you're building up to big ass payouts, you can do +3 power face up crosses or assaults in the meanwhile because you have them engaged ready. Curse
Okay.
commandments.
Okay. So you have a bunch of like little sometimes quite big pokes here and there, but really what you're doing is building gauge and then hitting them for like 10 no matter how you do it.
Yeah, because both sides basically unlock both a bunch of power.
Okay. Gotcha. So and that seems like it's the overall game plan because looking at her, it doesn't seem like she has that much in the way of damage outside of these like ridiculous nukes. So I want to be hitting with my ridiculous nukes.
Yeah, Batista is a character that she is. It's a character with lots of surprising spikes of power.
Yeah.
Like she could she. It seems like the game's going smoothly against Batista. You just poke back and forth, and it's only she just throws a fridge at you and you die. Like that's Batista.
Right.
It's
And
like
it's like she has a lot of really strong late game payouts, but late game for her means you have less than 15 life.
mhm,
Like
exactly.
late game is not for you is might not be the same as late game for her because she can kill you very quickly in one hit.
Yep.
Okay.
And like she's a character that's very capable of. She's a character that generates a lot of resources and also can use all those resources to her advantage to kill you.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's the specials and ultras kit, or maybe the ultras and specials kit for Vatista is probably better.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about we've talked about some of the normals as attacks and how they change, like how Spike is sort of turned on as a threat by Zahishio and stuff. Can you tell me a little bit about what she's using her normal boosts for and how we would evaluate them versus the attacks they're on?
Sure. Yeah, we can briefly go over them. I mean, yeah, we can
We
start.
you mentioned Tech Hit as being particularly useful to deal with autonomic nerve counterplay.
But it also applies to pretty much almost all her boosts because Vatista is a character that has a very nice set play for season 6 because she has a lot of nice little stats and effects here and there.
Right.
So So she has a very good set play. She has very good set play, and then tech hit just makes it even better because the opponent, tries and counters it with a light, which is normally pretty dominating +2 speed. Then you can just tech hit strike, and then you'll get a lot of benefit from your boost because you get the stats, and you get the gauge if you are doing it properly and you move.
Right.
So
So
tech hit's really good on her.
whenever I see a block in my hand and also have a good stat boost in hand ready to go, I'm feeling even more safe about that stat boost.
Yeah, it's like you can boost and have some peace of mind. The only exception, of course, you're fighting against Season 7 and they have any form of gauge and they do some cancel bullshit.
Right. They just blow you up on their turn because that's what they do.
Yeah, that's what Guilty Gear characters can do. But of course, it's still against slower paced characters, tech is still great. Yeah.
Sure. Makes sense.
And of course, Batista's blocks are better than normal blocks because she has way
She's so many
more force than every
resources.
character.
Right. She has
Yeah,
so many
so
resources. Okay.
the blocks, it's very easy for her to have very high value, high armor blocks. And they also gain you gauge. So block is an amazing card on her.
Okay.
Just don't wild thing out instant flight. That's it.
Right.
Focus is really good on her as well. I Veil Off is totally nice past turn play as Batista. Sometimes you've nothing much better to do, so you can just Veil Off. And then if you don't want to use your exceed side, you can just
Just
revert back
revert,
to front side.
build even more
Yeah.
gauge.
Yeah, you get a bunch of it's just free gauge and like it's low commitment. I mean, it's commitment because you spend focus, but
And
yeah,
focus
it's
is
still.
good, right?
But Veil Off is a very nice boost on her still. As a nice way to gain more gauge and it's a nice pass turn.
Right.
But of course, focus as a normal is amazing, and on Batista, she gets draw 2, or if she does her exceed side, she can draw 3.
Right.
Yeah.
I also noticed that a lot of because you started out saying like she's got really good projectiles, but she's also not bad at all in melee because she has some pretty solid melee tools. One thing that I noticed though is that a lot of her most sort of dominant melee tools, uh, like Ruber Angelus and Armabellum, aren't actually very good on defense. Because
Right,
they
on
could lose
defense,
clean to sweep. So maybe focus still has a pretty important place for her.
yeah, focus is still very nice to have to play on defense in range 1. Just because these aren't, like you said, these aren't without any sort of stat boost, these aren't the most reliable.
Right.
If you defend with them. Yeah.
Right.
If you
Okay.
initiate them, it's a different story. Initiate them, it's pretty damn safe.
Right.
But
Right. Right.
defending with them, yeah.
That makes sense.
So
Okay.
having focus is a nice fallback. Focus is amazing normal.
Right.
Probably one of the best ones.
Yep.
Sweep, sweep is really good. Not
Sweep
much to be said
is
about
always
that.
really good.
Yeah, nice tool to have in melee. Just defense, while it is kind of somewhat a niche boost, obviously I like to say that just defense shines when sweep is no longer useful, like you have low health and you need to plus your armor.
Sure. Yeah. Playing sweep would kill you then because you'll be outsped and die.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, of course, obviously in that situation, sweep would be pointless.
Right.
But plus 3 armor now strike is actually fine for a few of her tools. Plus 3 armor, plus 3 armor Ruber Angelus. Sully is like 4 armor Ruber Angelus, gives her a lot more defense to play with.
Right.
Gives her a lot more defense than Armabellum play with. Just defense focus as well. I mean, just defense is underrated.
Right.
Definitely, if you see situations where plus 3, like the opponent boosts any form of speed, they can just go, okay, just defend Ruber Angelus and you have 4 armor.
Right.
For free because the opponent's going to be outspeeding you.
Right.
So it's a good response to
Yeah.
diffuse stuff.
As long as they're not threatening a spike, you can make this you can make their speed much harder for them to get value off of.
Exactly. Yeah. Just that's nice. Okay, and then Spike. I mean, Spike is Spike. It's always nice to have. I already mentioned the interaction with Ishio.
Right. Definitely.
Not much to be said outside of that. Spike is Spike. Mix up is really great on her. Mix up. If the opponent's hugging her melee, she can mix up, retreat, cross out. She can retreat with mix up and plays the Hishio. Mix up will allow her to finagle ranges that might be awkward for her. Like, for example, the opponent's sitting at range 7. Okay, I'm just going to mix up Lumen Stella and hit them.
Sure.
This little itty bitty bit of movement now strike after draw 1. Like, it's really good on her. Like, you just finagle the right range you want and hit them. So mix up's amazing.
Makes sense.
Dive, dive is dive. Not much to be said about that. It sort of fulfills the same role as Transferons, mid
Yeah.
speed. Um,
And we also talked about how it's actually kind of useful as a range one or a turn one mix up rather with Migurusero because
yeah,
both of
cheeky
both
dive
of
turn
your
one.
moves lose to dive on lose a defensive dive. You need something.
Yeah, so that's still valuable for that as a mix up. And reading, reading can you can punish Vatista can punish people really heavily with reading. Um, she can do reading cross, make them retreat tree and destroy them. She has a lot of payout with reading. She can do Ruben Angelus, read something like read sweet Ruben Angelus, or read any sort of slow transference, read anything Zahishio, read anything big. Like she has so much big payouts that reading becomes that much more scary on her
Okay, so
compared to some
because
other characters.
sometimes if she gets just like not with every hit, but if she gets reading at a really important time, the opponent might just be dead.
Yeah, it is like backbreaking for the opponent if
Right.
if Batista gets off like a really high value reading. Yeah,
Okay.
so very scary boost to have just the trend. Um, Assault's great. It's a good if the opponent's afraid of transference, you can assault them and punish them. Um, the closer retreat 3 on air dash is you generally like as Vatista says you're like a zoner, so retreat 3, of course, great to have. Um, close 3, close 3 is like when you ran out. Sometimes you run out of tools at range, and you can brawl them in melee. That's fine. You can air dash and come in, and
Right.
if you ran out of fireballs
Right.
and you don't have any more curse commandments to abuse them. Yeah. So air dash is good. Um, Cross is amazing, obviously. Even more so since you're a zoner. On flip side, cross gets retreat 5. Oh yeah, exceed side. Yeah, it does synergize. Exceed side does synergize with these normals, so do keep that in mind
Right.
if you
And
ever want to close out the game with an advanced 5 dive.
although with dive in particular, you got to watch out because you might actually make yourself miss more easily too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Assault's maybe more reliable because you can close 4.
Right.
That one pretty much won't be missing, but
Right.
dive,
Definitely.
advanced 5 dive could be finicky.
Right.
Um, so cross is always really good on the zoner, and superior gives her, superior is also great as well. Gives her a little bit of stats to make her extra things scarier. Makes the Hishio above curve when you boost superior. Gives the Armabellum proper nice defenses and tree speed. Same with Ruber Angelus. Both of them are nice EX. And then Transfer on curve when you boost superior with it. So superior is a nice boost as well. Makes her things get that much more scarier.
Sure.
And then finally grasp, synergizer for UA, both sides of it. Push pull a bunch, push 3 to dodge sweeps. Respect is a nice way to get out of the corner very easily. And also trend card draw if the opponent just passes turn.
Right.
So you can do respect. In this position you can go respect to range 2, and if opponent initiates something, you mash cross to get out, or you can even go range 3, and then cross far away when the opponent tries to play a range 3 mix up.
Right.
Um,
Because cross really isn't positioning negative for you at all. You're not losing much by doing that.
cross will pretty much almost always be beneficial for you in terms of positioning afterwards
Gotcha.
because you want to be far away. So yeah, grass is a great normal, both sides of it.
All right.
Um,
Makes sense. So so that's the whole kit. That's every card she's got. And we've talked about sort of the zoomed out game plan where we're building gauge and then we're paying out a crazy amount of resources all at once. We've talked about how to get there. We've got like her little movement tricks here and there to keep herself safe while she's building those resources and how to build those resources. We've talked a little bit about the economy, how to reload and stuff. Um, do you find yourself needing to take the move and change cards actions a lot with Vatista, or are you kind of able to keep up with your just natural card draw and push and pull effects on their own?
Yeah, I think this is highly dependent on what options you have left in deck and the game state, et cetera, et cetera. But
Sure.
yeah, I do find myself that you don't really need to take the change cards action or move that action that much, because of the fact that she can change cards a bunch all at once. So it's just
Right.
like you could just draw a completely fresh hand. If your hand's like terrible, just see these things draw 7 very easily because of all ultras.
Right.
If you want to make a really big movement, you can. You have so much force. You can just spend 7 force at once and go here if you really
Okay.
wanted to.
So in either case, when you're using either part of these sort of like non-strike actions, you're probably doing a whole lot of it at once. And for Vatista, for changing cards, you're probably more likely to just be you're not really like digging for answers as often as you are just reloading after a big expense.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Um,
like Armabellum, like Latias Orbis, something like that.
mhm,
Okay.
yeah, and it's like if you are running out of but yeah, one big thing about her resource game is that sometimes like due to Arabellum, due to the Hishio, sometimes a lot of stuff will just be engaged that you might need as options for a reshuffle. So keep in mind the big thing about Batista is and a resource game is that make sure to not keep the options that you really want locked behind gauge. Make sure to spend the gauge or just change cards of your gauge if you need the options back for the reshuffle. Like for example, both grasp are engaged or both
Right.
crosses are engaged. It's like okay, you don't want to remove cross off the table entirely when you reshuffle because Batista can go through her cards pretty fast.
Right.
She can go through her deck pretty fast due to the nature of her kit. The Hishio puts a lot of resources on the table and then you change cards a bunch. She can go through your deck pretty fast. So you always have to keep in mind that don't lock things behind gauge before the reshuffle. You have
Do
to
you
keep give yourself a lot of options. You know.
That makes sense. Do you find yourself reshuffling frequently as Vatista, or taking the reshuffle action in a lot of games, or do you mostly just like do a gigantic change cards action to get through the bottom of your deck?
Yeah, mostly the latter. Mostly a
Okay.
gigantic change cards. Yeah,
Okay.
and if you're worried about reading from the opponents, no big deal. Just you can overdraw a bit and then you just discard the
Right.
one or two normals that they might know.
Right.
Like
Right.
you can change cards. Yeah, you get it.
Yeah. You've got 5 cards left in deck. They kind of can work out what's in your hand when you draw all of them. So you draw a few more than that, and then you get rid of the extras.
Yeah, if you worry about like yeah, you basically only have, like if you only like spike, like if you have like a random spike and random assault left in deck and they know it, just CC 2 more than you would,
Right.
and then discard the spike and assault, and you're fine.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
if
Okay.
you worry about reading.
Sure.
Yeah,
But in many games, you are reshuffling because of just how many cards you spend, and until you're doing a gigantic million damage attack, you're not hitting that hard. So the game's going to go a little long at the beginning.
yeah. Unless sometimes Batista will randomly blow up the opponent with Transferances, Ruberangelus, Lumen Stellas, some big, nice, chunky
Sure.
hits. But yeah, if you are pretty much if you're not landing those big chunky hits, then you will try and do the big payout with Lateas. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. Um. All right. So it sounds like that's the kit and that's the game plan. Any other sort of strategic notes you want to add about Vatista?
Yeah. Let me think. That's pretty much what I want to cover with the character. I guess matchup wise, I feel like Batista's pretty well rounded. She doesn't like DPs because DPs make stuff like crosses and Zeihichi harder. Um, Again, potentially will be outclassed by other zoners because um, she doesn't have like her fireballs require sometimes she might not have ready access to fireballs. The opponent like she's dealing with recurring fireballs from the opponent
Sure.
or the opponent has superior.
This guy, for example.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like he can Hadoken forever. So that's annoying. But she's still like totally capable of being a zoner and fighting other zoners, especially when you have big lasers on the table. Big laser will uptrade any fireball in existence.
There's no other laser in the game that can do what this laser can, I think.
Yeah. So as long as you have the threat of Zahishio, threat of Lateus, then the opponent should be scared of Batista at range. Yeah, if the opponent, and of course, if the opponent tries and parries Lateus Orbis, trying to get rid of your big game plan, you can just other ways to get value. Curse Commandment gets you a lot of value. Um, you can Lateus Lumen Stella gets you value. And you can basically, how should I say this? Yeah, you can always, as Batista, you can always find good ways to basically turn your gauge and resources into a lot of value, whether it's by landing big, nice hits, or just using the cleat side. Spend your resources are there. and you should spend them. Because if you
Right.
don't spend them, they're just I see a lot of new Vatista players. They just have 8 gauge and they're just rotting away doing nothing.
Right.
Spend them.
You have the ability to turn that into damage somehow. And you need to really crutch on the ways that you do have to, either by hitting with ultras or going for your big payouts. You need to convert that into damage.
Yep, exactly.
Makes
So it's
sense.
just like don't be afraid to spend your gauge. It's nice to save gauge for the big laser, but the opportunity for big laser or the boost never comes. Then
Right.
spend it, and you better spend it quickly before you reshuffle and they're long
Right.
behind gauge.
Right.
That's the
And
big flaw of Batista
it,
sometimes is
is
if you misplay
especially
like that.
that makes sense. All right. Especially if you're saving up for the big laser, and then it's the mid game. I have no cards in hand. I need to actually keep fighting for a while I get the big laser online. Change cards from gauge. Like keep it's not just that you're converting them into resources or converting your resources into damage. You also sometimes need to put them towards reloading.
Yeah, and Batista can just big reloads very easily.
Yeah.
So
But you need to be willing to
definitely,
spend. You need to be willing to spend your gauge to do it.
yeah, it's like basically the rule of thumb is like as long as you have at least 2 gauge, because 2 gauge turns on everything
Right.
except for big laser. As long as you
Right.
have 2 gauge just randomly sitting there, go ahead and change cards. Don't be shy about doing it for sure.
Makes sense. Okay. And you just kind of mentioned some of it about like she hates DPs, she hates above curve options. She might have struggle with other zoners. Any counterplay notes? Anything my opponents should be doing to deal with Vatista, or is that kind of is that mostly just the stuff that you were talking about?
Mm, I don't really have any specific counter. I mean, Batista is a pretty decent well rounder. I would say the biggest thing Batista's scared about is like if the opponent can go fast and has a good amount of power. So the opponent has boosting fears with some above curve option. That's scary because it just like her defense suffers because just her like these don't provide enough defenses
Right.
compared to sweep and focus. And if they put on boosted fears, then they can pretty they can like outspeed and crush them
Right.
with
Okay.
the
So
power.
so you're relying on things like tech hit as Vatista in order to deal with big boosts, to deal with like action compression and just hammering into her over and over again.
Yeah, so like Batista, if she does, Batista's actually good on defense if she has some little thing set up, like a little +1 speed,
Right.
she has that setup ready to go. Her defense is amazing, but she doesn't have that little bit of setup. Her defense can be lacking, like because these aren't the most reliable on defense.
Sure.
So just like if the opponent can't exploit when Batista's weak, then she might have trouble. Obviously, keep in mind that her wall swings are better than normal because she can just wall swing and invalidate a bunch.
Right.
But that depends on her having gauge. And of course, if she wall swings a bunch and there's a bunch of ultras that she doesn't want to play, that drops a bunch of options for her. So like
And that's a lot of resources spent on something that she better be winning at that point, and that's still a pretty bad situation for her.
yeah, exactly. It's like she can like for example like wall swing. Oh, I can't play Zahishio. Oh, wall swing the other copy of Zahishio. Well, I
Oh
know Zahishio.
no, yeah.
Shit.
Now I've got a really bad range 2 weakness. Um, okay, that makes sense.
So yeah, exploit Batista when she doesn't have anything set up because when Batista's nice and like set up with her little boost, her little advanced retreat boost up in play, she's quite scary.
Okay, so in the times when she doesn't have that, take advantage of those times and make her punish her hard for it, because she's going to punish you pretty hard when she gets a turn.
Yeah, and she won't be if she's low on resources, she won't be low on resources for long because she'll do massive change cards
Right,
and or just draw a bunch naturally with her effects.
right,
So it's
right.
like yeah, you have to exploit those openings where Batista's weak because yeah, she will pay back with interest if you don't because she has so much ways to
So
pay out.
so
Lots of
many
nice pieces of
resources to
power.
spend. Right. All right.
hmm
Cool.
Resource monster.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like then, Migo, I now have everything I need to start playing Vatista. So unless there's anything else you want to add, I think we can wrap it up.
Nice. Yeah, that's pretty much. I covered everything on her kit, so covered her overall economy and her game plan. I think we did it. Yeah.
We did it. We did it, Migo. Well, thank you so
Hooray!
much. Thank you so much for all of your time. Always appreciate talking to you. Thank you for the expertise and the lesson. Um,
Um,
hope it was enjoyable for folks watching. Who, by the way, thank you all for your time and your attention too. Go play Vatista. She seems pretty cool. I don't think enough people play her.
Very fun character.
Yeah,
Lots of resources. Yeah, go wild with her. There's a lot of things you can do with Vatista.
yeah, absolutely. All right. I will see you all for the next one. Goodbye, everybody.
Peace.